Hello, we are Margit and Persijn. And this is Persijn. I am Margit Lukaits, Persijn Breusen. And we're very happy to be here. Thank you to the Escuela de Cultura that invited us to this wonderful island that's really been intriguing us. And we are artists whose work, and that really fits in here, whose work mainly involves working with the perception of nature, and especially in a world that's increasingly experienced via our screens. We see the world, we consume the world, we experience the world we experience nature also a lot via our screens.
It's so amazing to be here there because there's so much nature around us that is like somehow we are working over here behind our screens and being in nature at the same time, which is different than in Amsterdam, of course. I mean, there's less nature.
Yeah, with the volcano really not far away, we notice it, we feel it. And at the same time, the sea and the sun and the stars. We see stars here, which we don't see in Amsterdam. We can experience so much more of the earth and sky over here.
And so as artists, we mainly work digital, so we work with the computer, but our work, mainly we show nature. So we show actually somewhat like the idea of nature and how that changed because of our screens. So the way or understanding of the world changes by seeing a lot of this world via our screens. And so how that sort of changes the things that we see in our screens, but also how we see reality because of we are watching so much through our screen. Well, I think like what you can say about our art, that it is mostly the thing that are the most opposite in a way, that the screen, the digital world is very unnatural, but what we show is mostly very much about nature. So that is very much about like the forest and the trees. So very opposite things, digital nature. How is it?
And when we make work, we never just film like you, but we make always like digital models. And so that means we have to take thousands of photos. So we really the way we look at things is very time consuming actually. It's we really try to have a relation with the things that we film or the things that we photograph. And with these thousands of photographs, we make worlds. We make our own forests, our own barks, tree barks, whatever you name, mountains, landscapes. But then in order to have this experience of watching in a more, that more relates to each other, so observing the mountains, observing nature in a very special way.
And so what we use as our tool is not so much a pencil, but we use like the computer mouse, you could say, we use the computer as our tool. And so our canvas is more or less like the screens instead of like the canvas of a painting. you know, when we have new ideas about work, it's like little plants that grow, and we never know which plant will grow faster, but you have to somehow like water them, and you have to sort of like watch them grow. And somehow I think a lot of like little plants are growing here on La Palma that are sort of like inspiring our work. And what this exactly means is like it's a surprise too. It's like something that we cannot tell yet.
Sometimes it just starts with a book. We read a book about...
Like a plant. A book is like a plant.
We read a book about the primeval forest in Poland. We read now, I came across this book here in La Palma about petroglyphs. And here you see La Palma war auch die Insel der Kartografen. And she states that all the petroglyphs are also mappings of the universe, of the earth, of the craters and volcanoes here. And these kind of texts really inspire us also to go search for the deeper meaning of all of this.
Yeah, because what it shows is that they had like a very different understanding of the world as we see it. And so we can never really fully understand, of course, what they were thinking. But what we can understand is that there's a difference between sort of interpreting like the things that we know and the things that might be. And so also that is like a space that is open for artists to sort of like interpret and use again and like look into that and see what we can, how we can use that to inspire not only our work, but like how that can sort of change things. I think like what is important is that to think about like maps in general. Like these maps, they are showing a reality, and at the same time they are also fictional, because like we can watch at the symbols and we can watch at like everything that we see, and they are not the reality itself. They are sort of like a fiction of, and we understand how to read it. But like with these old maps from the petroglyphs, they are the same. They are exactly the same, but we just don't know the symbols. But we know it means something, but it's a very different way of understanding this. So that a map is always partly fiction, partly reality.
But it's also a dialogue, you could say. Like this map is telling us of a certain view on the territory. The way the Benoritas are having a dialogue with the earth is really inspiring. So we know these kind of maps, we know.
We understand.
We understand completely, but these kinds of maps is also partly like a ritual. It's also partly about magic. It's also partly talking to the gods of the sky and the earth to have rain, or it's like a rain ritual. And that's another conversation then that we have with these kinds of maps.
Because of like the digital age in which we are now, we feel that like the way that we understand this new world that is coming behind like the endless sort of like space behind your screen, this space where there's no gravity, where there's no sort of like gravitational forces, there's no like known forces, but it is a space that you can sort of like, that has to be designed somehow. What is important is when we make films about nature, actually the films are not so much about nature, it's really how we look at nature and how this changes because of the way that we use our screens. We watch nature in a different way.
But also perhaps this history of watching nature, be it in science, be it in culture, there's always been like a shifting relationship with the earth. So in science, you would see the earth as a distant blue ball that's somewhere there, and we reflect on it, but we are not really in dialogue with it. And so we are also searching for new ways of understanding the earth. That's why we, for instance, we photographed a tree bark of the primeval forest of Białowieże. And that tree bark is already it's a very old tree, I guess. And we traveled through the bark with our camera to explore this landscape, but really from close by.
And then it looks like a planet that we don't know. So there's like something inside of a tree bark which we see like every day. I mean, you see them every day. But if you look really closely, this is actually another planet.
But at the same time, we are conscious of the way that of course, there are borders to our imagination. It's not that we have an endless imagination and that we can understand everything of what indigenous people try to tell us. So, in a way, it's good to always try to open up new ways of looking, new ways of thinking about this relationship to nature, and especially now, in this era of destruction, you could say it's really important to think in a different way about nature and our relationship to it. So our work is not really about conquering new worlds, but it is about discovering new relationships to the earth and to see the things anew that you've already known for such a long time. And here in this on this island, nature is so apparent. It's such a huge force, and you really cannot escape it. While in Amsterdam, it's easy to you can just be there and be on the streets and you won't experience any of it.
Yeah, and well, I think like also the way we discover new worlds is because of watching like nature, we also discover the space behind the screen. And this is something that is like, because this place behind our screens, like behind our like laptop screens, you know, I mean, I go in here, but it's flat over here. So nothing is actually happening in there, but there's so much space in there. And to discover that, we have to, you know, how to start imagining what that space could be. We can use nature also to think of that space. And also, I think like what is, you know, really fascinating in La Palma is that you have all these different regions of climate in such a short range. So you can like hop in your car and in one day you can visit all these completely different places where normally you would have to drive like, or you would have to take an airplane, but you can now just drive to like all these different places. And somehow it's such a different idea of like understanding how Earth has come to has come to life, because you can see all these different places and understand also by just watching the landscape how it is formed. And you can see it happening now by the volcano. Like a mountain suddenly appears where there was no mountain before.
So the opportunity that we get while being here at this island and invited for this residency means so much, not only for us, because for us it's like to be in close contact with nature, to actually discover these beautiful petroglyphs and the history behind it. And that's not such a long time ago that it was that some of these drawings were discovered. So there's a whole lot still to explore in there, which is really fascinating to us. So for us, it's a whole new world that's surprisingly comes up in this island next to the nature, which is wonderful and absolutely a part of our work. But then I think in general, for the society here, it's perhaps good to also look in a new way, for instance, to these drawings, to these new maps of the world, because some of them are completely overgrown, or there's not so much attention anymore for it. Perhaps it will come back, but I think this attention, these drawings, they need a lot of research, attention, and I think artists like us perhaps can find more curiosity in finding these kind of explanations about why they came into being, because they are also led by imagination, and perhaps we as artists, we can try to think about it and try to find all of them on this island, and there are a lot of them, and some of them are hidden behind bushes and fences, and some of them are just there to be visited. But there's not yet much known about these drawings. So there's still a lot that needs attention, and I think artists like us, we can a bit let it appear again and give it our concentration.
What I think is as an artist here, I mean, something that you normally don't experience, but somehow feel there is not just a country, not just a little bit of a world, but there's a whole, almost it's like a whole large part of the whole planet is somehow symbolized, or not symbolized. It's like part of La Palma. So La Palma in itself is a whole new, it's a whole, not new, but it's a whole world in itself, which has, and by being in La Palma, I mean, you understand a lot more about the larger world, because you can see it. It's like a mini version of the planet, you could say, La Palma. It has so much that is normally hidden because of distances, because of borders. But over here, it feels like that that it makes you understand what is important about Earth, and what is about how to understand it. It becomes easier. One of the petroglyphs in Vagana, which has been discovered, I think, in 1982, because it was completely overgrown with plants, and then suddenly someone found it, and it's still really, it's very easy to reach, and it's very sort of it's not visited a lot, but it's so you can get pretty close. And so what we can do then is take a lot of photos of it, and we can make it into a 3D model. And so we can actually take it home, almost, you could say, and we can create an artwork with it very easily by having it really in a 3D space. But the thing is, with this 3D space, it just has the surface. So it's just like the thickness of a screen, you could say, and I can put many pictures in there, but it will not take in space. So it's just the surface that we see. And so this creates another map of the map itself. And I think there's something really interesting in the fact that the one side is exactly the same as the other side. So we have two sides of the same map, and so we can see it's just the surface, it's just the patina. It's just a map from both sides.
We are here also to you could call it a story, a narrative. We're trying to find another narrative about mapping the earth, mapping the territory. There's the way how Columbus mapped it. There's the way how Strabo mapped it. There's the way how all the old explorers tried to map the earth in order also to have new trade routes or new islands to conquer or whatever may be the case. But there's also other ways of mappings, alternative ways of mappings, and that's one of these is the petroglyphs. That's why we're so intrigued by it, which might be maybe the heavens of it might be a depiction of the heavens. It might be a depiction of the rituals. It might be a depiction of the volcanoes, but it's an alternative way of looking at the earth and the sky.
And what we also find really beautiful is when we look around over here and during walks that we make, we see so many patterns that are natural. So they are made by the trees or by the rocks, and they look really a lot like these petroglyphs. So we can see how the people are actually mimicking nature and making it into their own sort of you could say written language. We also took a lot of photos of natural elements that we find when we are walking everywhere in the island, in the south, in the north, high up, low down, and we see this kind of real natural petroglyphs. So we see the lines, and sometimes it's a lava stream, sometimes it's rocks, and sometimes it's elevation lines that you can see. You can see there's so many of these elements that are that the Benoitas used by mimicking nature, and they would make it into their own language. And so they learned from the place they were living in that sense too.